one of the mistakes we make is that we view earlier times as simpler and better. Decisions back then appear to have been easier and more obvious. We believe this because things seem to have worked out favorably. And in spite of all the problems, we are, by nature, optimistic people. That our future as doctors now seems so uncertain is not a new phenomenon. Many of you don't know it, but I'm the historian of my county medical society. We are fortunate to have most of our records dating back to our origins in 1864. Many of us may be familiar with the major historical figures and trends of medicine, and they are important. But little attention has been given to another important source, our medical ancestors, physicians just like you and me who actually delivered the health care for their generation. Reading an examination of these ignored texts gives insight about what the average doctor thought and the problems they faced. What is fascinating and to me comforting is that many of the same issues from those times are essentially identical to today's issues. The problem of medical malpractice is first recorded in my medical society in 1902. We should take some solace that the issue of medical malpractice began to occur when physicians finally were recognized as professionals with principles and standards of practice and the legitimacy of state medical licensure. Generations prior to that time had fought to be recognized as professionals and opposed others, then often called charlatans and quacks, who called themselves doctors. These doctors of the latter half of the 19th century worked and encouraged state involvement in physician licensure. And yes, we still have our modern-day quacks, those who believe that they can do what we do, not realizing what great danger a little knowledge brings. The victory of professionalism spawned new concerns of the role of the state and the influence of the legal profession, which still haunt us today. I think we are all familiar with the Pure Food Drug Act of 1906, which set up the Food and Drug Administration. Like most legislation, it failed to pass several times. When the bill was defeated in 1905, the protests from my small county medical society along the Fox River were fierce, denouncing big business and corrupt politicians. Do you believe that the problem of insurance companies are recent? In 1906, life insurance companies, possibly colluding with each other, cut the reimbursement for insurance physicals from $10 to $3. And some insurance companies believe that's still a living wage today. Many think the push for national health care began with Democratic President Harry Truman in the late 1940s. The goal of national health care actually has its origin in the progressive movement in the early 1900s, long before the modern Democratic Party took shape. Few of us know that the political activity of the American Medical Association began in earnest during this same era to counter this progressive area ideal. And some of you here today opposed the formation of Medicare in 1965. Now that you've retired and are benefiting from this generally successful system, how many of you would oppose it now, even as it drives the nation deeper into debt? I don't have all the answers facing medicine today. I don't know when there will be meaningful medical liability reform. I don't know if the President's health care plan will be successful. I don't know if accountable care organizations will be the savior of health care or will wind up on the trash heap of so-called other great ideas. All I know is that we have to keep trying. Whatever may come, I'm reminded of my father's words about an ancient curse he told me. May you live in interesting times. Certainly these are interesting times. They are also unsettling times for physicians about our future and our identity. My reading of our history is that each generation will have to struggle with these new problems. It never was easy being a physician, and if the past is any guide, it won't be any easier going forward. And like our ancestors who solved very important problems of their generation, they cause new problems and headaches for future generations of physicians. One of the reasons why I joined this organization, and I think many of you also, was to be involved in the great issues of healthcare of our time. And involved and cursed we are. It seems that many of us now find this curse of involvement, this curse of responsibility, too great and wish to quit. I am disturbed when I hear stories, too many stories, of physicians telling their children, our children, and our future that it's just not worth going into medicine anymore. I think we all need to reflect why we do this. In these uncertain times, we forget why we do this and descend into self-doubt and self-pity. My story of why I wanted to become a doctor may not be yours, but I know you have one. I got involved in medicine because of my mother. In the spring of 1944, my mother was hospitalized at Oak Park Hospital in a coma from meningitis. She was not expected to live. Penicillin was still new and was rationed. It was only available to children under 18 and military personnel. As luck or fate would have it, my mother was 16 and thus was eligible. According to family history, my Uncle Stanley drove to Fort Sheridan to pick up the medication since my grandparents didn't own a car. My mother says her physician told the family he had never administered penicillin before. Apparently, the medication that my uncle brought back came with no instructions, and her doctor, not knowing what to do, gave my mother the entire dose. Then he called it a day and didn't expect much. Much to his surprise, and to my family's, the next morning my mother had awakened. She was hospitalized for 6 weeks, but eventually fully recovered. For a long time, and with a side trip for a master's degree in microbiology, I pondered a single word that would account for my mother's story. Medical progress? Yes. Life-changing? Certainly. A miracle? Absolutely, especially for the religious. But to me, these words were lacking. After going through medical school and residency and into practice, and with a few similar experiences of my own, I finally found the correct word. It was wonderment. As doctors, we all share in this mystery of wonderment. We are smart people. We could be successful in many other professions and careers, many with higher pay and fewer headaches, and certainly less cursed. But we chose this. No one forced us into this profession. The need for excellent grades, top MCAT scores, endless hours of study, years of clinical work, and long nights on call. What madness would have driven us to do this except for a glance at wonderment? As we enter this new stage of our medical society and of healthcare, let us be strengthened and comforted that our ancestors too faced difficult circumstances and were successful. Let us be strengthened by members of our medical society who throughout history left their practices to defend our country. Physicians like Abner Hart from my county, who as regimental surgeon of the 8th Illinois Cavalry cared for his wounded and dying troopers during the American Civil War. And through today, with the service of Dr. Nancy Taft, Army surgeon recently returned from Afghanistan. Let us be strengthened by the dedication of Dr. Julia Mecklejohn, who, though grievously ill, answered the call to care for a patient and died during the performance of her duty. Let us be strengthened by the curse of our responsibility to care for our patients and lead our profession. And finally, let us be strengthened by the chance and hope of wonderment. Thank you very much.